widow counted pennies with trembling hands. 7 cents short for bread. Then a cowboy did something that heals hearts. Subscribe to Wild Sky Stories' new emotional tales every day. The afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the dusty street of Sage Creek, a small town nestled between rolling hills and endless prairie. The year was 1887, and times were hard for everyone, but especially hard for a young widow named Hannah Mitchell. She stood inside Peterson's general store, her worn leather coin purse trembling in her hands. The smell of fresh bread filled the small shop, mixing with the scent of coffee beans and dried herbs that hung from the wooden rafters. Hannah's stomach growled quietly, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, when she'd given the last of her oatmeal to her 6-year-old daughter Lily. 1 penny. 2 pennies. 3, 4, 5. Hannah counted them slowly, her lips moving silently as she arranged the copper coins on the worn wooden counter. Mr. Peterson watched her with sympathetic eyes, his thick gray mustache twitching as he waited. Behind Hannah, a line was forming. She could feel their stares on her back like needles. 6 pennies. 7, 8. Her heart sank. The loaf of bread cost 15 cents. She was 7 pennies short. Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Peterson said gently, leaning over the counter. Perhaps you could come back tomorrow when you have. Please, Hannah whispered, her voice cracking. My daughter, she's waiting at home. She's so hungry, Mr. Peterson. If I could just have half a loaf, I could pay you the rest next week when I finish the mending for Mrs. Crawford. The shopkeeper's face twisted with genuine conflict. He was a kind man, but he had his own family to feed, his own bills to pay. The winter had been brutal, and everyone in Sage Creek was struggling. I'm sorry, Hannah. I truly am, but I've already extended credit to half the town. If I give away any more, I'll have to close my doors. Tears burned at the corners of Hannah's eyes. She quickly gathered her pennies, shoving them back into her purse with shaking hands. The shame of it all pressed down on her shoulders like a physical weight. Just 2 years ago, she and her husband Thomas had owned a small ranch outside of town. They'd been happy. They'd had enough. Then the fever came and took Thomas in the night, and the bank came shortly after with papers she didn't understand and demands she couldn't meet. Now she lived in a small room above the blacksmith's shop, taking in sewing and laundry when she could find the work. Most nights, she went to bed hungry so that Lily could eat. Excuse me, ma'am. The voice came from behind her, deep and gentle like distant thunder. Hannah turned to find herself looking up at a tall stranger. He wore the clothes of a working cowboy, dusty trail-worn boots, faded blue jeans, and a weathered brown hat that had seen better days. But his eyes were what caught her attention. They were the color of summer grass after rain, kind and clear, and looking at her with something that wasn't pity. It was something else entirely. I couldn't help but overhear, the stranger said, removing his hat respectfully. His dark hair was pressed flat from riding, and there was a day's worth of stubble on his strong jaw. Please allow me. Before Hannah could protest, the cowboy reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. He counted out coins onto the counter, not just 15 cents for the bread, but enough for cheese, dry meat, apples, and a small bag of hard candy. Add it to her order, he told Mr. Peterson, and throw in whatever else she might need for the week. Hannah's face flushed with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. Sir, I can't possibly accept this. I don't even know you. Name's Wyatt Callahan, the cowboy said, his voice soft but steady. And you're not accepting anything, ma'am. I'm just doing what any decent person ought to do when they see someone in need, but I have no way to repay you. Wyatt smiled then, and something in Hannah's chest shifted. It was the first genuine smile she'd seen directed at her in months. Then don't repay me. Just pass it on someday when you can. That's how my mama raised me. She always said kindness is like seeds. You scatter them without counting, and eventually, something beautiful grows. Hannah wanted to argue more, but her empty stomach and the thought of Lily's hungry face waiting at home stopped her. She swallowed her pride, something that had become increasingly difficult to do since Thomas died. Thank you, she whispered. Truly. Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Just Wyatt, ma'am. He tipped his hat and stepped back, allowing her to collect her groceries. As Mr. Peterson packed everything into a cloth sack, Hannah glanced back at the stranger. He was buying his own supplies now, coffee, beans, and ammunition for what she assumed was a hunting rifle. Everything about him spoke of a man who lived on the trail, someone passing through town on his way to somewhere else. She shouldn't have felt the pang of disappointment that settled in her heart. She had no business feeling anything for any man. Thomas had only been gone 2 years, and she was still drowning in the grief of losing him. But there was something about Wyatt Callahan that made her want to know more. Hannah gathered her bag and hurried out of the store before she could embarrass herself further. That night, as Lily devoured the fresh bread with butter and cheese, her small face bright with joy, Hannah sat by the window of their cramped room and watched the stars appear one by one over Sage Creek. "Mama, where did all this food come from?" Lily asked, her mouth full of apple. Hannah smiled softly. "A kind stranger, sweetheart. A cowboy who helped us when we needed it. Like Papa used to help people." The question pierced Hannah's heart. Thomas had been exactly that kind of man. Always the first to offer a hand to a neighbor in trouble. Always willing to share whatever they had with those who had less. "Yes, baby girl. Exactly like Papa." Lily nodded thoughtfully, satisfied with the answer. "I hope we see him again. I want to say thank you." Hannah pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I hope so too," she admitted quietly, surprising herself with how much she meant it. 3 days passed, and Hannah tried to put the mysterious cowboy out of her mind. She threw herself into her work, mending shirts and dresses for the few customers who could still afford her services. But every time the blacksmith shop door opened downstairs, her heart would skip and she'd find herself glancing toward the window, hoping to see a familiar weathered hat. She didn't see him. On the 4th day, Hannah walked to the edge of town to deliver a repaired dress to Mrs. Crawford, the banker's wife. The woman paid her fairly, though with the distinct air of someone performing charity rather than conducting business. Hannah accepted the coins with a practiced smile and turned to leave. That's when she heard it, a child's scream. Without thinking, Hannah ran toward the sound. Behind the Crawfords' grand house, near the old well, she found Lily's best friend Emma Porter, the blacksmith's daughter, clinging to the edge of the well's stone wall. Her feet dangled over the dark opening, and her small fingers were slipping. "Hold on," Hannah shouted, rushing forward. But she wasn't fast enough, she wasn't strong enough. The well was deep, and the child was slipping, and Hannah's heart screamed, aimed with the terror of what was about to happen. Then he was there. Wyatt Callahan appeared from nowhere, moving faster than seemed possible. He grabbed Emma's wrists just as her fingers lost their grip, pulling her up and over the wall in one powerful motion. The little girl collapsed into his arms, sobbing with relief and fear, and Wyatt held her gently, murmuring soft words of comfort. Hannah stood frozen, her hand pressed to her racing heart. She watched as the cowboy calmed the frightened child, as he checked her for injuries, as he wiped her tears with a handkerchief pulled from his pocket. "You're safe now, little one," he said quietly. "You're safe." By the time Emma's parents arrived, frantic with worry, Wyatt had already slipped away. But Hannah had seen the direction he'd gone, and something inside her wouldn't let her rest until she found him. She discovered him at the town's small cemetery, standing before a weathered headstone. His hat was in his hands and his head was bowed. "Mr. Callahan." He didn't seem startled by her approach. "Just Wyatt, remember?" Hannah stopped beside him, glancing at the headstone. The name carved into the stone was Margaret Callahan, beloved daughter. "Taken too soon, your daughter?" she asked softly. Wyatt nodded, his jaw tight. "She was 7 years old. Same age as that little girl at the well. Same age as your Lily." Hannah's heart ached. "What happened?" For a long moment, Wyatt didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "Fever. Same one that swept through these parts 2 winters ago. I was away on a cattle drive when it hit our homestead. By the time I got word and rode back, she was already gone. My wife Sarah, she blamed me. Said I should have been there. Said I chose the cattle over my family." He paused, swallowing hard. "She wasn't wrong." "And your wife?" "Died 3 months later. Doc said it was her heart. but I think it was grief. She never recovered from losing Margaret, and she never forgave me. Hannah felt tears sliding down her cheeks, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. I'm so sorry, Wyatt. He turned to look at her then, and she saw that his own eyes were wet. I've been wandering ever since, taking odd jobs, moving from town to town. I told myself I was looking for work, but the truth is, I was running from the guilt, running from the memories, running from myself. And Sage Creek. Wyatt's expression softened. I was just passing through. Planned to stay one night, resupply and move on, but then I saw you in that store, counting your pennies, and something in me just stopped. Hannah's breath caught. I don't understand. Neither did I, at first. Wyatt stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. But then I realized what it was. For the first time in 2 years, I wanted to help someone. I wanted to stay. I wanted to feel something other than empty. Wyatt. No, I have no right to say this. We barely know each other. You're still grieving your husband, and I'm still carrying more baggage than any man should ask a woman to share. But Hannah, when I look at you, I see hope. I see a reason to stop running. I see the possibility of a future I thought I'd lost forever. Hannah's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Everything he was saying was crazy. They'd only spoken twice. She had a daughter to think about, responsibilities that didn't leave room for foolish romantic notions. But standing there in the fading light, surrounded by the silent graves of those who had lived and loved and lost, Hannah realized something important. Life was short. It was fragile. It could be taken away in an instant, without warning or mercy. She had learned that lesson when Thomas died. And the only thing worse than losing love was being too afraid to reach for it in the first place. I don't know what the future holds, she said honestly. I can't make any promises. I have Lily to consider, and we're barely surviving as it is. Wyatt nodded. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance. Let me stay in Sage Creek. Let me find work here. Let me prove that I'm the kind of man who won't run anymore. He paused, his voice dropping to nearly a whisper. Let me earn your trust, Hannah, however long it takes. She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of deception or false hope. She found only sincerity and a vulnerability that matched her own. Okay, she said finally. Okay, Wyatt, you can stay. His smile then was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Thank you, Hannah. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest and happiest of Hannah's life. Wyatt found work at the livery stable, his skill with horses earning him a steady wage and a growing reputation as someone who could be trusted. He didn't push Hannah for more than she was ready to give. He simply showed up. Every day. Consistently. He fixed the leak in her roof that she couldn't afford to repair. He brought Lily wildflowers that he picked from the prairie. He shared meals with them when Hannah allowed it, telling stories of the open range that made Lily's eyes grow wide with wonder. Slowly, almost without her noticing, Wyatt Callahan became part of their lives. One evening, as autumn painted the hills in shades of gold and crimson, Wyatt arrived at their door with something tucked under his arm. Hannah opened the door to find him standing there, nervous in a way she'd never seen before. I made something, he said, for Lily. He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a hand-carved wooden horse, every detail perfect from the flowing mane to the tiny hooves. Lily gasped with delight and threw her arms around Wyatt's legs. Thank you, thank you, thank you, she squealed. Hannah watched the scene with tears in her eyes. She saw the way Wyatt's face transformed as he hugged the little girl back, saw the healing tea. Had was happening in both of them. Wyatt, she said softly, once Lily had run off to show her new treasure to Emma. I need to tell you something. He looked at her, hope and fear warning in his expression. Whatever it is, Hannah, I can take it. She stepped forward and took his hands in hers. They were rough hands, coal-used from hard work, but gentle when they needed to be. I was so afraid after Thomas died, afraid of being alone, afraid of trusting anyone again, afraid of letting myself feel anything that might lead to more pain. She squeezed his hands tightly. But you've shown me something important. You've shown me that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about finding someone worth the risk. Wyatt's breath caught. Hannah, what are you saying? She smiled up at him, her heart full to bursting. I'm saying I love you, Wyatt Callahan. I'm saying I want you to stop waiting to earn my trust and start being part of this family. I'm saying I want to build a future with you, whatever that looks like. For a moment, Wyatt couldn't speak. Then he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you too, Hannah Mitchell, he murmured into her hair. I've loved you since the moment I saw you counting pennies in that store. I didn't know it then, but my heart did. My heart knew it had finally found its home. And so it was that a wandering cowboy found his rest in a small room above a blacksmith's shop, in the arms of a woman who had lost everything and found it again in the most unexpected way. They married that winter, in the small church on the edge of Sage Creek, with Lily standing between them holding wildflowers and grinning from ear to ear. Years later, when people asked Hannah about that day in Peterson's general store, about the pennies and the bread and the stranger who changed everything, she would smile and say the same thing every time. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can lead to the greatest love. Sometimes, the person who saves you isn't the one you're expecting. And sometimes, just sometimes, counting pennies for bread is exactly where you need to be.